Hey, let's talk autistic history and the Autism Wars. This is part 12 of a series. So we left off in the last episode in the 90s and the rise of the parent-founded autism organizations. And I shared the first part of an introduction to a series I had started writing last year titled Inventing and Then Cashing In on the Autism Epidemic. I'm going to share the rest of that introduction on this video with you guys right now. So parents of autistics in the 90s were absolutely insisting that there was a true and real increase in the numbers of autistics being born than there had ever been in the past. In fact, they were in high alarm about it and insisted this was a public health crisis and an impending epidemic that the whole world was going to have to bear the burden of. And if an answer hadn't been found for autism and a cure, we would bankrupt the world. So that's where we're at, and I'm going to pick up on the next half of this introduction. Oh, and let's not forget the fear and the threat that autism was coming for everyone's child. Everyone's child. It could sneak in the middle of the night. And the next thing you know, the autisms are here. Yeah, okay, let's just get to this next part. So now I'm reading. The problem here, the autism epidemic wasn't real. Now I know that might be surprising to a lot of people, but the autism epidemic was never real. It was a marketing ploy and a lobbying gimmick used by parent-founded autism organizations. It was a rallying cry to grab the world's attention and direct it to their cause. It was a tactic instrumental in achieving a massive amount of attention in a very, very, very short amount of time. And it worked spectacularly well. It was incredibly well. The marketing of that certainly made autism feel contagious because it was starting to be heard everywhere after a while. But it wasn't true. But that method worked so well that even today, the general public still believes there is an autism epidemic. So in all this hoopla, autistics were only included as a prop, and those who didn't fit into the autism mold that these parents shaped were exiled. So in the beginning, the parent-created autism community did give small lip service to autistic self-advocates in their conferences and events. But that didn't last long. It didn't last long at all. Autistic self-advocates didn't represent their version of autism. And by the mid-2000s, the autism community excluded the autistic community completely. So for many years, autism advocates pretended autistic adults didn't exist in the numbers that we do. Autistics who were critical of their ableist awareness campaigns were scorned, minimized, dehumanized, and even vilified. To the world at large, these autism advocates acted like the autistic community didn't exist. To autistics, they argued we weren't autistic enough to matter, or we were too autistic to have any real ability to self-advocate. Regardless of the reason, these parents believed their voice for their child to be far more important than the lived experience of any autistic alive. And while this brand of advocate screamed, "Autism speaks, it's time to listen," They simultaneously use their privilege to silence autistics from the national conversation. They circumvented the entire autistic community and simply did what they wanted. This pattern of suppression and oppression, for the most part, unless something's dramatically changed in the last year, and I don't believe it has, this remains in effect today. So when the autism community is included, the autistic community is excluded. So why did the leaders of the autism community create this pattern? Well, because autistics in the autistic community, well, we knew the truth. There wasn't an autism epidemic. There was also no impending autism tsunami either. And autistics in the autistic community knew that the preventative measures to help babies reach adulthood, that particular series of preventative medication did not cause autism either. We also knew ABA was conversion therapy and abusive. And we also knew the only cure for autism was prevention of birth. The same cure society created for Down syndrome. Right, so how did we get here? How did these autism organizations and parent advocates convince the world there was a public health crisis? How did they convince legislators there was a real epidemic coming? How did they get stigma and abuse ingrained into our support systems? And why did these parent-founded autism organizations weaponize non-autistics against autistics? Oh boy, buckle up, because this is a true tale that makes the documentary of Tiger King look tame, and that was wild. But this, whoa, the history of these autism organizations and their founders includes some of the most powerful people in the world. It includes big business, the government, world leaders, presidents, senators, of course these autism wars, the snake oil, venture capitalists, movie producers, fashion designers, lawsuits, death threats, and way more. But none of this could have happened. None of it could have happened if there wasn't first and foremost, an autism epidemic. Alright, so that wraps it up for this video, but we're going to go into part 13 and talk about the 90s and what autistics were doing and what parents were doing and what happened back then. So thank you for joining me and learning a little bit more about autistic history.